They called it suicide. The eggheads back on Earth said it was impossible. But someone had to be the first to fly into a black hole and live to tell about it. And if anyone was going to do it, you could bet your ass it would be humans. It was 2257, and we were locked in a war with the alien Hazari that had already claimed billions of lives. Their technology outclassed ours in every way. We were losing. Bad. If we didn't find the source of their power, and soon, humanity was toast. That's where the Erebus came in. Jesse Ramos, an astrophysicist way too smart for his own good, had a theory. He thought the key to the Hazari's tech was hidden inside the supermassive black hole they used as their base of operations, Kali's Eye. So Ramos built a ship that could survive the forces inside Kali's Eye. A ship crewed by the craziest sons of bitches he could find. Pilots, engineers, soldiers. Men and women just unhinged enough to think flying into a black hole was a good idea. Earth's leaders thought he was nuts. They threatened to shut him down. But Ramos and his crew of misfits were ready to roll the dice. On the eve of the mission, they gathered at their makeshift launch pad on the ragged edge of human space. Ramos looked over his crew with a mix of pride and dread. These magnificent daredevils would either be humanity's salvation or its last failed gambit in a war that had brought our species to the brink of extinction. What Ramos didn't know was that there was a viper in their nest, a Hazari operative named Uko, surgically altered to pass as human, who had infiltrated the crew to sabotage the mission. As the Erebus's engines ignited with a deafening roar and blasted the ship towards Kali's Eye, Ramos and his crew hurtled into the unknown with a hidden enemy among them, racing to unlock the secrets of a cosmic abyss from which nothing human-made had ever returned. The Erebus shuddered as it accelerated through the void, its engines straining against the immense gravitational pull of the nearby neutron star. Inside the ship's cramped cockpit, Lena Ivanova's hands flew over the controls, her brow furrowed in concentration as she executed the daring slingshot maneuver. Beside her, Jesse Ramos monitored the ship's systems, his eyes locked on the readouts that flickered and danced across the screens. "Zorgax's ship is still on our tail," Mike Tanaka reported from his station, his voice tight with tension. "They're closing fast." Ramos nodded grimly. "Lena, how much longer until we reach the slingshot point?" 30 seconds, Ivanova replied, her voice steady despite the beads of sweat that glistened on her forehead. The Erebus groaned as the neutron star's gravity took hold, the ship's hull creaking under the immense strain. Ramos gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles turning white as the force pressed him back into his seat. Suddenly, a brilliant flare of light erupted from the neutron star's surface, bathing the cockpit in an eerie blue glow. Ivanova let out a whoop of triumph as the Erebus hurtled forward, propelled by the star's gravity. Behind them, Zorgax's ship was caught in the star's pull, its engines flaring as it struggled to break free. "We did it!" Tanaka exclaimed, pumping his fist in the air. But Ramos's celebration was short-lived. As the Erebus rocketed towards Kali's Eye, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. "What's happening?" he demanded, his eyes scanning the readouts. "Multiple systems failures," Ivanova reported, her fingers flying over the controls. "Main engines are offline, shields are at half strength. We must have taken more damage than we thought during the slingshot." As the crew worked frantically to repair the ship, Aditya Singh sat hunched over his console, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. He had been monitoring the ship's systems closely, and something wasn't adding up. The failures were too precise, too targeted to be random. Someone was sabotaging the Erebus from within. Singh's fingers danced across the keyboard as he delved deeper into the ship's code, searching for any sign of the intruder. Suddenly he froze, his eyes widening in shock. There, hidden among the lines of code, was a message that could only have come from a Hazari spy. "Captain," Singh said urgently, his voice cutting through the chaos of the cockpit. "We have a problem." Ramos turned to face him, his brow furrowed in concern. "What is it, Singh?" "There's a Hazari operative on board," Singh replied, his voice grim, "and they're trying to sabotage the mission." Before Ramos could react, the Erebus lurched violently, throwing the crew from their seats. Singh's console exploded in a shower of sparks, sending him flying across the cockpit. "Hull breach on deck 4!" Tanaka shouted, his voice barely audible over the blaring alarms. As the crew struggled to regain control of the ship, Ramos hauled himself back into his chair, his mind racing. They were running out of time. Kaylee's eye loomed ahead of them, a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to swallow the very stars themselves. And somewhere on board, a hidden enemy was working to ensure they never reached their destination. Suddenly, Tessa Nichols let out a gasp, her eyes wide with terror. "Captain," she breathed, her voice trembling. "I've seen it. The future. Earth, destroyed by the Hazari. We have to stop them. We have to—" Her words trailed off as another vision overtook her, her body convulsing with the force of it. Ramos watched her helplessly, his heart pounding in his chest. Nichols's visions had always been unsettling, but this was something else entirely. This was a glimpse of a future too horrifying to contemplate. As Nichols's vision subsided, Ramos took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. They were out of options. The Erebus was badly damaged, the crew was on the brink of collapse, and a Hazari spy was sabotaging their every move. But Ramos knew they couldn't turn back. Not now. Not with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. "Listen up," he said, his voice ringing out through the cockpit. "I know we're in bad shape. I know the odds are stacked against us. But we've come too far to give up now. Earth is counting on us. Every man, woman, and child back home is depending on us to succeed, and by God, we're going to give them a fighting chance." He turned to Ivanova, his eyes blazing with drive. "Lena, I need you to get us through that Hazari blockade. Whatever it takes. Tanaka, Singh, keep the ship together. We're going to need every ounce of power you can give us." As the crew scrambled to their stations, Ramos turned to face the view screen, his gaze locked on the swirling maelstrom of Kali's eye. "Hang on tight," he said grimly. "We're going in." With a roar of engines, the Erebus surged forward, hurtling towards the waiting Hazari fleet. Lances of energy crackled through the void as the alien ships opened fire, their weapons slicing through the Erebus's weakened shields like hot knives through butter. But Ivanova was ready for them. With a wild grin, she sent the Erebus into a dizzying spiral, weaving through the Hazari formation like a needle through cloth. The ship shuddered and groaned as it took hit after hit, its hull buckling under the onslaught. Ramos gripped the arms of his chair, his teeth gritted as the Erebus plowed through the heart of the Hazari fleet. Consoles exploded around him, showering the cockpit with sparks and debris. But still the ship pushed on, its crew refusing to yield in the face of their enemy's might. And then, with a final, desperate push, the Erebus broke through the blockade, its engines flaring as it hurtled towards the waiting embrace of Kaylee's eye. Alarms shrieked and warning lights flashed as the ship crossed the event horizon, the black hole's inexorable pull dragging them down into the abyss. As darkness enveloped the Erebus, Ramos closed his eyes, his mind filled with visions of Earth, of the billions of lives that hung in the balance. They had done the impossible, but their journey was nowhere near the end. In the heart of Kali's eye, a new battle was about to begin, a battle for the very soul of humanity itself. The Erebus burst through the event horizon, emerging into a realm that defied comprehension. Swirling clouds of plasma and twisted ribbons of light surrounded them, painting the view screen with an otherworldly kaleidoscope. "My God," Ramos breathed, his eyes wide as he took in the impossible vista before them. "We made it." Ivanova's hands danced across the controls, fighting to keep the ship steady in the chaotic currents of the black hole's interior. "Sensors are going haywire," she reported, her voice tense. "There's something out there." As if in answer to her words, a massive structure materialized through the swirling debris of the accretion disk. It was a sprawling complex of twisted metal and crystal, its architecture an affront to Euclidean geometry. Sections of the station seemed to fold in on themselves, disappearing and reappearing at impossible angles. "That has to be it," Ramos said, leaning forward in his chair. "The Hazari Research Station." Before anyone could respond, A swarm of sleek, deadly shapes erupted from the alien structure. Hazari fighter drones, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly sheen, bore down on the Erebus with terrifying speed. "Evasive maneuvers!" Ramos shouted as the first salvo of energy blasts slammed into their shields. Ivanova's expression resolute as she sent the ship into a wild spiral, narrowly avoiding a barrage of weapons fire. The Erebus shuddered under the assault, alarms blaring throughout the vessel. "Shields at 60% and falling," Tanaka called out, his fingers flying over his console. "We can't take much more of this." As the crew fought to keep the Erebus intact, Uko saw his chance. The Hazari operative slipped away from his station, moving through the chaos of the ship with practiced stealth. He made his way to a maintenance junction, hands moving with inhuman speed as he accessed the ship's systems. On the bridge, Singh's eyes narrowed as he noticed anomalous readings flickering across his screen. "Captain," he called out, his voice cutting through the din of battle. "Someone's tampering with our weapon systems." Ramos spun towards him, realization dawning on his face. "The spy," he growled. "Find them." Singh's fingers flew across his keyboard, engaging in a frantic electronic duel with the hidden saboteur. Lines of code flashed across his screen as he worked to undo the damage being wrought on their systems. Outside, the Erebus wove through the debris field of the accretion disk. Ivanova's piloting skills put to the ultimate test as she dodged both Hazari weapons fire and chunks of superhot plasma. The ship groaned under the strain, its hull scorched and battered. Suddenly, Nichols gasped, her eyes going wide. "Captain," she said, her voice trembling, "I'm detecting massive energy surges from the station. They're doing something to the black hole itself." As if to confirm her words, the very fabric of space-time began to warp and twist around them. The accretion disk rippled like the surface of a pond, waves of distortion radiating outward from the Hazari station. Ramos stared at the nightmare unfolding before them, his mind racing. Whatever the Hazari were doing, it had to be stopped. There was only one option left. "Lena," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them, "get us in close to that station. We're going aboard." Ivanova nodded, her face set in unyielding commitment as she guided the battered Erebus towards the alien structure. Ramos turned to Singh and Dr. Sakai, the ship's medical officer. "Suit up," he ordered. "We're going in." As the three men donned their armored exosuits, Ramos addressed the remaining crew. "Hold the ship together," he said, "and keep those drones off our backs. We'll find a way to stop whatever the Hazari are planning." With a hiss of escaping atmosphere, the airlock cycled open, and Ramos led his team into the twisted labyrinth of the Hazari station. The interior was a maze of shifting corridors and impossible geometries, gravity itself seeming to flex and bend around them. As they pressed deeper into the alien complex, none of them realized that their presence had already been detected. Deep within the station's core, Hazari warriors prepared to spring their trap, while on board the Erebus, Uko worked to ensure the humans would have nowhere to run. The secrets of Kali's eye lay just beyond their reach, promising salvation or damnation for all of humanity. The airlock hissed shut behind Ramos, Singh, and Dr. Sakai as they stepped onto the alien station. Immediately, their senses were assaulted by the impossible geometry of their surroundings. Corridors twisted and bent at angles that shouldn't exist, walls rippling like water. "My God," Sakai breathed, his eyes wide behind his helmet visor. "It's like being inside an Escher painting." Ramos tightened his grip on his weapon. "Stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with here." They advanced cautiously, their footsteps echoing strangely in the shifting passageways. Alien machinery lined the walls, pulsing with an eerie blue glow. Singh ran his scanner over one of the devices, his brow furrowing. "These energy readings are off the charts," he reported. "I've never seen anything like it." Suddenly, the corridor ahead of them warped and contorted, revealing a new passageway that hadn't been there moments before. Ramos held up a hand, signaling the team to halt. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice tense. Before anyone could respond, a horrific sight stopped them in their tracks. Strewn across the floor were the mangled bodies of Hazari scientists, their alien forms twisted and torn as if they'd been put through a meat grinder. Sakai knelt beside one of the corpses, his medical scanner whirring. These injuries, it's like they were pulled apart at the molecular level. The black hole, Singh said, his voice grim. They're experimenting with its gravitational forces, playing with fire on a cosmic scale. As they pressed deeper into the station, the true scope of the Hazari's plans began to unfold. Singh hacked into a data terminal, his eyes widening as he decrypted the alien text. "Captain, you need to see this," he called out. "They're not just studying the black hole. They're trying to weaponize it, turn it into a force capable of tearing apart entire star systems." Ramos's expression resolute. "We need to shut this down, now." They fought their way through the twisting corridors, the laws of physics seeming to break down around them. Gravity fluctuated wildly, forcing them to magnetize their boots one moment and fight crushing pressure the next. Finally, they reached a massive central chamber. At its heart stood a colossal machine, its alien architecture defying description. Tendrils of energy arced from its core, distorting the very fabric of space-time. Singh's scanner began to shriek. "That device, it's tapped directly into the singularity. The power levels are critical. If it destabilizes..." His words were cut off by a barrage of energy fire. Hazari security forces poured into the chamber, led by a towering figure Ramos recognized all too well. "Zorgax," he snarled, diving for cover. The alien general's voice boomed through the chamber. "You're too late, humans. The power of the cosmos will be ours to command." As energy blasts ricocheted off alien alloys, Ramos realized they were out of options. He turned to his team, shouting over the din of battle. "Singh, see if you can access that device's control systems. Sakai, with me, we're going to overload the reactor core." Singh hesitated. "Captain, wait. If we could capture this technology, use it against the Hazari..." "No time to argue," Ramos cut him off. "That thing's about to tear this whole station apart. We end this now." As Singh reluctantly set to work, Ramos and Sakai fought their way towards the device's power source. The air crackled with energy, reality itself seeming to warp and twist around them. Ramos planted the explosive charges, his hands steady despite the chaos. 30 seconds, he shouted. "Singh, we need to go." But Singh was transfixed by the alien console, his fingers flying over the controls. "Just a few more seconds," he called back. "I've almost got it." The chamber shuddered, cracks spreading across its walls as the singularity device began to destabilize. Zorgax's forces pressed their attack, energy blasts sizzling past Ramos's head. "Singh!" Ramos roared. "Now!" With a frustrated growl, Singh tore himself away from the console. The three humans sprinted for the exit as the charges detonated behind them. The alien device imploded, reality itself seeming to fracture and splinter in its wake. They raced through the disintegrating station, dodging Hazari pursuers and chunks of collapsing architecture. The fabric of space-time groaned and buckled around them, threatening to swallow them whole. Finally, they reached the airlock where they'd entered. The Erebus waited beyond, battered but intact. As they stumbled aboard, Ramos caught a glimpse of the alien station through the viewscreen. It was folding in on itself, consumed by the very forces it had sought to control. "Get us out of here!" Ramos shouted as the airlock sealed behind them. The Erebus's engines roared to life, propelling them away from the collapsing station. As they hurtled back through the accretion disk, the full weight of their actions settled over the crew. They had prevented a catastrophe, but at what cost, and what nightmares had they unleashed in the process? As the Erebus fought its way clear of Kali's eye, Ramos knew their ordeal was just getting started. The Hazari would not take this defeat lightly, and the secrets of the singularity still beckoned from the depths of the cosmos. The Erebus shuddered violently as it erupted from the collapsing singularity, alarms blaring throughout the ship. Ramos gripped his chair, his fingers tightening as he watched the nightmare unfold on the monitor. The black hole's death throes had birthed a hellscape of twisted metal and warped space-time. "Report!" he barked, fighting to be heard over the cacophony of alerts. Ivanova's hands danced across her console, her face a mask of concentration. Main engines are offline. We're running on emergency power. Navigating this debris field is going to be... Her words were cut off as a massive chunk of what had once been a Hazari cruiser tumbled past, missing them by mere meters. The Erebus groaned, its hull straining against the chaotic gravitational forces. "Lena," Ramos said, his voice steady despite the chaos, "get us out of here." She nodded, her eyes never leaving the controls. The battered ship limped forward, weaving through the lethal storm of debris. A jagged piece of alien alloy scraped along their port side, sending a bone-chilling screech through the vessel. Singh's fingers flew across his keyboard, his brow furrowed in frustration. "Captain, the data corruption is spreading. I'm losing most of what we recovered on the Hazari weapon." Ramos banged his head against his armrest. "Save what you can. We didn't come all this way to leave empty-handed." The minutes stretched into an eternity as Ivanova guided them through the gauntlet. With each near miss, each groan of the hull, Ramos felt his heart pounding in his chest. Finally, mercifully, they broke free of the accretion disk. For a moment there was silence on the bridge. Then Tanaka's voice cut through the stillness, cold with dread. "Multiple contacts. It's a Hazari fleet." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sea of alien warships. Their sleek, deadly forms filled the stars, weapons primed and ready. At their center loomed a massive dreadnought, its hull overflowing with weaponry that put the Erebus to shame. "We're being hailed," Singh reported, his voice tight. Ramos nodded. "Put it through." The screen shifted, and Ramos found himself face to face with General Zorgax. The alien's eyes burned with fury, his voice a guttural growl. "You dare violate our sanctum, human vermin?" "Your sanctum was an abomination," Ramos shot back. "A weapon that could have destroyed entire star systems. We couldn't let that stand." Zorgax's tentacles writhed and barely held back rage. "You have no concept of the forces you've meddled with. Your primitive minds cannot grasp the power we sought to harness." "Maybe not," Ramos admitted, "but we know enough to understand it was too dangerous to exist. Your singularity weapon is gone, Zorgax. You've lost." The alien general's eyes narrowed to slits. "Then you will die with that pitiful victory on your lips. All ships, open fire. Obliterate these insects." The view screen went dark, replaced by the sight of countless missiles streaking towards them. Ramos closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable. But the impact never came. Instead, the bridge erupted in a chorus of shocked gasps. Ramos's eyes flew open to see a swarm of human ships blinking into existence around them, their weapons blazing as they engaged the Hazari fleet. "It's the Fifth Fleet!" Tanaka cried out, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. Ramos watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded. Human ships danced between Hazari vessels, their guns spitting fire. For a moment, hope swelled in his chest. Then reality came crashing down. A human cruiser exploded in a brilliant fireball, then another. The comm channels filled with the screams of dying crews and final acts of desperate courage. "Sir," Singh called out, his voice thick with emotion, "it's Nichols. She's on a collision course with one of their heavy cruisers." Ramos could only watch as Tessa Nichols' ship streaked across the battlefield, slamming into the Hazari vessel in a cataclysmic explosion. The alien ship split apart, chunks of its hull spinning away into the void. "She's bought us an opening," Ivanova said, her hands already moving to the controls. "We can make it to the jump point." Ramos nodded, his throat tight. "Do it." As the Erebus limped toward salvation, Ramos watched the battle rage behind them. One by one, the human ships winked out of existence, their crews making the ultimate sacrifice to ensure the black hole mission's survivors escaped. With a final gut-wrenching lurch, the Erebus engaged its jump drive. The battlefield disappeared, replaced by the swirling vortex of faster-than-light travel. They had escaped, but the cost had been unimaginably high. Ramos slumped in his chair, the weight of command pressing down on him like a physical force. They had struck a blow against the Hazari, but at what price? As the Erebus hurtled towards Earth, he knew that the true reckoning was yet to come.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.